Hi folks, the Filipina P here. Back when I started my channel, I said I'd always tell it like it is. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, today it's about the ugly. The ugly expat. Not in terms of physical appearance, but regarding their behavior and reasons for being here. As we all know, not every foreign visitor to Southeast Asia has honorable intentions. And today I'm going to expose the 6 types of expats that Filipinas might want to avoid because letting one into your life could be fatal to your happiness. So get ready to meet the ugly expat. Almost none of you guys are gonna be the type of person I'm describing in this video. At least, I hope not. I think my channel attracts a higher class of viewer in general. And from what I've seen, most of you guys are pretty thoughtful and not only interested in TNA. After all, I've only had 4 videos out of 240 where I've had a reason to wear a swimsuit. So it's obvious that if you're looking for that kind of content, you probably wouldn't even be watching my channel in the first place. Instead, I think you come here for well-reasoned arguments or to learn something new about the Philippines or to see things from a different perspective. And that's what you're gonna get today. In recent times, the word stereotype has gotten a sinister reputation. Well, there are some very different stereotypes about foreigners too, regarding the kind of men that come here. And there's a little bit of truth in each one. Now, it's funny how some people might say, P doesn't know anything about men or men's motives. She's not a member of the boys' club. You gotta be a man to understand. But then these same people proceed to tell you all about women and women's motives, which completely debunks their own reasoning. Oh, the irony. But I do understand what goes on here because I see it unfold every day from both sides. So I can definitely tell you what Filipinas think about the stereotypical foreigner, and it's this. In general, the guys that come to the Philippines are more financially stable than we are. They're interesting to talk to, and they usually make good lifelong partners. Most of them seem to have good intentions too, and they generally don't abuse their women. Are there exceptions? You bet. But when a Filipina describes the stereotypical expat, those are the traits that come to mind. But some of you, usually other men, see foreigners in a completely different way. You stereotype expats in a very negative light and describe them as old, broke, perverted, desperate losers that can't make it in their own countries. And from your perspective, maybe that's true. It's certainly not how I'd characterize them, but to be completely honest, you're not always wrong. Now here's where we find a little truth in both positions, even though they're completely opposite. Since I always try to look at things from all sides, today let's take a look at the kinds of expats you don't want to meet. The Desperado. It's okay to want to start over in a place where no one knows your name and your reputation does not precede you. Maybe you went through a divorce or had your kids taken away and you want to leave the pain behind. Maybe you're looking for the kind of relationship that just can't be found anymore in the West. Maybe you just like the thought of resetting your life clock and starting fresh. There's nothing wrong with any of that, and it can be a great way to re-energize and recreate yourself, if that's why you did it. It's often been said that a man can literally get lost in the Philippines, and no one could ever find him. And sometimes that's why people come here, because they're fleeing something. Maybe it's because of a lawsuit. Maybe it's because of criminal activity. But for whatever reason, some people just don't want to be found. So they come to the Philippines to disappear into the hills. They don't report to immigration to extend their visas. They don't apply for driver's licenses. They just vanish and live in the shadows. Now, I'm not saying that all these people are necessarily bad characters, but I wouldn't want to tie myself to someone who lives on the run. And all too often, Filipinas don't really have a clear enough idea of who they're getting involved with. Buyer beware works both ways. Mr. Bait and Switch. Despite what it says, this guy's here for a sex holiday. He could come right out and say it, But instead, he creates the phony backstory of a man who just went through a nasty divorce, who's looking for a chance to do it all over again and find the love of his life in the Philippines. He has no intention of staying in a third world country, probably no intention of even returning, and he certainly isn't gonna bring a Filipina back to the West. But he knows how to portray himself for maximum effect and dangle his carrot right in her face. He gets a thrill from the hunt, and unfortunately for the Filipina, it'll be too late by the time she realizes she's chasing a decoy. Just like the movie Predator, where the alien comes to the jungles of Earth to stalk his prey. This guy knows where the hunting is good, and he's only there for the momentary rush of pleasure, like an amusement park ride. What's ironic is that he could just tell the truth, that he's been married for 40 years to a woman he no longer feels a connection with, but doesn't want a divorce, and his safari would still be successful, but he knows he has better odds with his fake persona. And who cares about a little heartache, as long as it isn't his? Make it a triple. This kind of expat may or may not have a problem with substance abuse, and in this country, it's usually the liquid kind. Everyone knows that the Philippines is pretty big on drinking. It's the unofficial national pastime, and a lot of people do it. It's not unusual to see people getting a little drunk in the afternoon, so it's perfect cover for the guy that likes to tie one on and not get nagged about it. In a nation full of drinkers, he can blend right in, and his Filipino partner probably won't say much about it unless it's way out of control, because she's already used to it from the other men in her life. It also doesn't help that alcohol is so ridiculously cheap here, with a bottle of gin costing only $1.50. That means that even the broke expats can feed their habits, and no one will say a word. You'll see groups of expats clustered together at the local watering holes, which is a good place to meet and socialize. But there always seems to be that one guy that doesn't know when it's too much of a good thing, and I've seen a couple of expats crash and burn because of lack of self-control. Now, whether people come here to drink or whether the Philippines drives people to become drinkers, it's up for debate. But the fact remains that this country makes having a lifestyle of drinking very, very easy. If a Filipina doesn't mind being with a guy who has a drinking problem, that's her business, but it usually gets in the way of having a really good relationship. The broke, the sad, and the fugly. This is the one you hear all the time. The men that retire to the Philippines are old, broken down, and ugly. So what? It sounds to me like they made a smart move. They managed to maximize their value by moving from a tough market to one that's more favorable. Kudos to them for figuring it out. And since when did it become okay to stigmatize people based on their limited finances, or that they took a beating by the ugly stick? Are they just supposed to wallow in their misery and say, oh, I'm old and broke, so I better just sit in the corner and not dare to try to have a better life? If you were talking about any other group of people, you'd be ashamed of yourselves for attacking them based on things beyond their control. People whose only crime was making the best decisions with what they had to work with. But somehow, when it's old men, they're suddenly fair game and exempt from common decency. Well, sorry, but there's nothing wrong with people in this category, and I refuse to join in the name-calling. I only add them to the list because the claim is factually true. Some of them are old and broken down, but there are bigger fish to fry, like the next type of expat. The baby maker. This is one of the most destructive kinds of foreigners because he really doesn't care who he hurts or how many lives he ruins. He blows through town like a typhoon, sleeping with every woman he can seduce. And if he's a decent-looking or sweet-talking foreigner, that's gonna be a lot. He loves the fact that Filipinas don't use any birth control other than the withdrawal method, which is about as reliable as he is, because he doesn't care what happens once he's gone. It's almost like a game to him, and it allows him to indulge his evolutionary desire to spread his seed as far and wide as possible, while escaping any responsibility for his actions. He knows he can travel all around the Philippines, imitating a fire hose, and that as long as he doesn't use his real name with any of his conquests, there's nothing anyone can do to find him or to stop him. There are many documentaries about the babies left behind by this type of behavior, sometimes from men who made promises of a life together and then disappeared before the child was even born. These kids will never know their fathers, and they'll grow up with a mother who's now struggling with yet another mouth to feed. But this kind of guy really doesn't care. He's had his fun, and now he's done. But of course, it takes two to tango. So half the blame lies with the women who so easily allow a man into their bed. As I said before, if a Filipino wants to engage in casual sex, that's her business. Just use reliable birth control, and this won't be an issue. And if you're one of these women that mates with a foreigner because you think it'll make him stay with you, or because you're just compelled to have a mixed baby like it's some kind of a status symbol, then the only person I pity in all this is the child who's gonna grow up without both parents. There is no abortion here, and all sales are final. So make sure you know what you're buying into before you spread your legs. Once upon a time, if I had a peso for every time a Western guy told me he was an ex-Navy SEAL or Special Forces guy, I'd have a lot of pesos. The sheer number of high-power attorneys, retired brain surgeons, and Fortune 500 CEOs that have apparently decided to give up their amazing lives in the West to retire here in the Philippines is truly astounding, especially considering the meager way they choose to live once they get here. Now, although I can see right through the BS, there's a lot of naive Filipinas that swallow this stuff, hook, line, and sinker. They're amazed and impressed by guys who are completely full of it. But the Philippines is a place where you can recreate yourself. So guys can get a little creative when rebuilding their past as well. Some of you might say, so what? They're just exaggerating a little. But who wants to start a relationship built on lies and false histories? It's kind of like a woman who says she's only been with a few guys, when what she really means is she's only been with a few guys per month. A lie is a lie, and it's best to stay away from people who have to inflate their egos, inflate their resumes, and inflate who knows what else. The Uncle Joe. There's something off about Uncle Joe. He always seems to end up around little kids or teens, and when you're not paying attention, he's sniffing their hair or touching them in ways that make everyone in the room uncomfortable. His phone is full of TikTok videos of dangerously young girls performing dangerously provocative dances. All completely legal videos, of course, but it just gets your radar going. Now, I'm not here to say that every guy that watches a TikTok video of a young girl is guilty of anything, but to be completely honest, there's some times when that stereotype happens to be true. It's no secret that Southeast Asia has a problem with this particular type of foreigner, but much to its credit, my government does a pretty darn good job of weeding them out and encouraging people to step forward when they know something. Obviously, I don't need to say what I think of this kind of activity, but suffice it to say that I'd be one of those people that says something if things went too far. Well, that's my take on the kinds of foreigners that can leave a bad taste in your mouth, but fortunately, there aren't many of you that are like that. I look forward to reading your comments, and if I left out any categories of bad expats, I'm sure you'll let me know. Till next time, folks. If you think about it, I'm kind of like a Vulcan, using my calm, cool logic to address your concerns about life in the Philippines. And just like Mr. Spock, I'm a half-blood as well, with one foot in the East and one in the West, giving me the ability to meld with your mind on topics concerning the culture here. All that I ask in return is a thumbs up on this video, subscribing to my channel, and hitting the notification bell so you know when the next episode has been presented for your analysis. Oh, Jim, you're looking good today. Have you been working out? Oh no, Paul, I'm far. Well, since it looks like I'll be busy for the next few hours, I suggest you view my other videos during my absence. Is that the captain's log? Are you gonna make an entry?